Hey guys, this is Matt.
And this is Sean. Welcome to the show. We're meeting at the crossroads of wellness and sales in an attempt to share different mental, physical, and spiritual tactics to attain better results in your life of sales.
We're going to experiment, challenge, and discuss what may or may not work for you in hopes to push you to become the best version of yourself. Hope you enjoyed today's show.
All right.
We're back.
We're live. Jordan, what's going on, man?
Rocking and rolling. Start of a new month always gets me excited to think about, where do I want to go? What did I do before? And how do I keep moving forward?
How was your last month?
Last month was good. Best month of the year. Somehow actually came out of it not feeling that great, which was interesting. As you kind of manage and navigate the emotional ups and downs, and you expect I had my best month of the year, but then the next day I kind of felt crappy. So I took a little bit extra time.
I think that's been very apparent in the world of COVID, not having the whole world around you to ring the bell and do all that. You win a big deal and you kind of look around and you're like, well,
Guess I'll buy a gong on Amazon and hit it myself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, congrats on that good month. Maybe just to kick things off, if you could give maybe a quick intro on yourself and a little bit of your background, and then we can just take it from there.
Yeah, so I have been working in the tech startup world for most of my career. Stumbled into sales first. I guess my first job wasn't in tech. It was working for Lululemon selling yoga clothing, is what they called an educator.
Do you have any discounts still by chance?
Yes, but that's because I'm also a yoga instructor.
All right, we'll talk about that one offline.
Yep, actually, most of my wardrobe's still Lululemon. But I started out there where they actually had a really interesting model of how they ran the business, of how they ran the stores, where they called you an educator. You weren't like a salesperson or anything of the sort, which I didn't really realize, but set a really interesting tone for me as I ended up working at a couple other tech startups and then moving to Hubspot, who championed this concept of inbound marketing, which was all about, hey, the internet has changed the way that buyers and sellers interact. It has given your buyers much more information before they ever come to talk to the salesperson, so they're more educated. Yeah. And so as a salesperson, there's so much noise out there. It was like, oh yeah, I've got to help educate people. And got to HubSpot a little while before we went public, watched us grow from 700-ish to, 5,000 or something like that now. And have also started my own business called My Core OS, where I work with different sales teams, leaders, and companies on understanding their personal operating system. Because school hasn't really given us all the skills that we need to avoid burnout, to manage our mental health, to create our best life. Because I've just seen too many people on kind of a hamster wheel without a lot of purpose and a lot of knowledge about how do they manage themselves. So bringing in mindfulness, psychology, and all sorts of other pieces around the mindset to ultimately help people perform at their best. So that's how I keep myself busy in today's day and age, balancing HubSpot and then the My Core OS and my own podcast as well. Talking to sellers about peak performance selling, getting into that mental side of things.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that fits definitely right in with kind of what we're focused on, because we're so focused on that number for the year or the month or the quarter and how do we get there. And then when we're setting goals, typically it's that specific number. And even if we take it outside of that, even if it's personal, that might be great. But it's the mindfulness that you mentioned that I think's the core to getting to either the personal goals or the quota that you're trying to hit as well. So that's awesome.
There's always a human behind the quota, and you got to optimize it. So Jordan, kind of starting at the beginning, where did this passion come from? When did you start getting into the mindfulness and the psychology and the whole, My Core OS? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, if I look back, I think a lot of it started in college. My freshman year of college, I got introduced to a friend that introduced me to meditation. He gave me these CDs that played different tones in each ear, and your brain
binaural beats.
Some binaural beats. And that blew my mind. And that same year, I went with a girlfriend of mine when I came back home during one of the breaks in freshman year of college, and she finally convinced me. I was a young athlete, thought I was going to play baseball, to go to a yoga class. And I was around these, I don't know, probably 50, 60-year-old women. I'm this like 18-year-old kid who thinks I'm strong and whatnot. And they kicked my butt.
Yep.
I was wrecked, but at the very end of the class, I'm laying there and just felt an energy course through my body that I got me to the point of saying, like, there's more out there that I don't know or don't understand. And that's what opened my mind to start becoming really curious, to start learning and exploring all sorts of different books on mindfulness and meditation, neuroscience and the brain. And it also happened at a really great time because there was a lot of scientific study that started coming out about the power of meditation on the brain and how people can maintain and find more happiness and joy and more equanimity through challenging times and through struggles. And so that's what really started me on that path that I've been on for probably the last 12, 13, 14 years now.
I think the thing that's interesting is talking about your, at the time, girlfriend, kind of breaking down that barrier to get you to go to the yoga class. And I think that's important to call out because as salespeople, there's this historical connotation. You have to be this type A, aggressive kind of person. And as you start talking about yoga or meditation, you know, maybe the connotation is you're softer, but I think the more and more salespeople I've been talking to, it's just at top of mind. So I think across the board, being salespeople, a lot of us have broken through that, and it's great because now we can openly share that and not feel like we'd be discriminated against. It's saying I'm going to yoga or I'm about to go meditate. More and more people are talking about it, which I love, or building businesses around it, which is great too.
And companies are taking notice too and taking it seriously with the mental health days and breaks, and COVID just of course accelerated that. And that's good to see the acceptance because it was kind of the outlier. Like, why don't you just come to the bar and drink with me? You don't need to meditate.
Exactly. Or it's like, again, you do
more calls.
You do classes on cold calling, but you don't do classes on, well, what's your mindset during that cold call, which I think is the next step. I think it's critically important, but now the training should be mindfulness going into that cold call or that pitch to set yourself up for success, because otherwise, if you're not mentally there, client's going to know and see right through that bullshit.
100%. I think that was one of the big realizations for me, that I've realized most managers, most sales leaders go to their team and say, hey, make more phone calls. But almost anybody in today's day and age can do the math and realize that more phone calls will make them more money and make them more likely to get to their quota, but they're still not doing it.
Yeah.
And so we can actually start to understand what are our deeper motivations. I'm really motivated by traveling, by, being able to play golf and go out and ski and snowboard in the winter. And those are the things that drive me. And maybe it's, I want to buy the new house. I want to take a big trip. Like, those are things that are so much more motivating to me than just hearing a leader say, dial the phone more. And so those are the types of skills that I think if we can actually get more in touch with ourselves, we can actually empathize with our prospects better too. But if we don't address our own shit, which is a constant work in progress, as of my day yesterday continues to point out to me, it's something that I think a lot of us really struggle with and have never been given the tools to support or deal with, from a management level all the way to the top and the individual contributors.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the managers too, assume that everyone's money motivated, and they don't dig into the intrinsic motivation of the person. Because after if you've had a good couple of years, the money just kind of wears off. It's a nice place to be in, but then it's just like, okay, there's more zeros in my bank account. Maybe I'm still unhappy. Like, what's going on? What is really driving you? And I think they're hopefully starting to take more notice to that, because it's not always about the money why people are in sales.
Well, and I think too, that brings up a good point. There's someone I work with, and I think there's parts of it that are true, talking about, the salesperson of today is going to be gone in 10, 20 years, whether it's some sort of AI or all the information's there. But I think it's just a salesperson or sales manager is going to be wearing many, many more hats. And I think they're going to have more things to talk about. Again, deeper levels of mindset of person, who they are, their goals that, again, aren't just their number that they're going to hit. So as a sales manager and sales direct individual contributor, all those things are going to impact you. So probably even more so for the manager themselves. Every one of what you're managing, 5, 10, 15 people, they're all wired differently. You have to understand their personalities, but you're also going to have to understand what drives them, their mindset when they're at good times and bad. And the tough part is, so many of us being more remote it's going to be even harder. So it's going to be something that as a manager, you're going to also have to hone in on for your sales team and your salespeople moving forward. And I think that's where, it's going to change as you're wearing different hats. You're focused on different things that are going to motivate and drive you, that it's going to cut through. There's not going to be a blend. It's going to be a strong gap of the overachievers and those that get it, and those that don't, I think, are just not going to be able to succeed, moving forward in the world of what is selling in 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I think you are spot on. And I think that there is this challenge that most managers, again, were just great reps. And they're even at big companies that have these amazing cultures and learning and development and training teams, a lot of the managers don't get a lot of time to get trained on understanding themselves better. How do they show up? How do they lead? I took a really cool course at MIT that talked about neuroscience for leadership, and they talked through, how do you understand the crazy moments that have happened in your life that have impacted you and how you show up and how you interact with people. And I was sitting next to, CTOs of, Fortune 500 companies, C-suite guys that are like, I've never thought about this experience that happened when I was 14 and how that shows up with how I don't trust anybody on my team.
Yeah.
It's kind of a powerful thing to understand. And so I think there are so many opportunities for our leaders to get trained. And ideally, if we can start really on both sides of the spectrum with the leadership team and the individual contributors so they're speaking the same language, I think that just opens up a massive door for us as we talk about the great resignation that everybody's talking about now, people so unsatisfied with their jobs. And it's like, well, how do we help people find more meaning and purpose in what they do? And I think a lot of that starts with ourselves, as challenging and painful as that might be.
Yeah. And I think it just goes back to, I've had managers from the best of the best to the worst of the worst. And, I think you compare good managers as to how they react in good times and in bad, and then what's effective in regards to like your overall one-on-ones of, what are you talking through and are you getting things done? But I think to that point, there needs to be a whole different list of questions that are asked in one-on-ones between salespeople and their managers that hasn't ever been there. Not just how the deal's going.
Let's go deeper.
Yeah.
How are you doing mentally?
Exactly. Could you, right now, I couldn't imagine, I love my boss to death, but I couldn't imagine him asking me that. But I think in the future, that's going to be the type of question that you're going to have to ask.
Or even when you onboard someone new, like, hey, let's walk through these questions so I can understand you better. What drives you? Where do you come from? Why are you here? Is it just money? Is it not? I mean, do you want to get to leadership? The questions just aren't answers. Okay, what do we have in pipe? What are we doing? How much pipeline did you build? All right, how are we doing on quota? Okay, thanks, bye. Yeah. A lot of them. I mean, there are some great ones I've had, but
we've tried to add some creativity to at least our QBRs that we've implemented. So before we kick off, our QBR and get drilled with 1 million questions, the last time we did it, it was who were you in high school? It was trying to like dig a little bit deeper from a personal perspective. Who were you? Talk about the car you drove, talk about your girlfriends, talk about the sports you played, which was a way to at least ease the tension before getting drilled. But I thought that was kind of cool to change it up, all remote, different people. And I think the time before that we did something net new that you've learned during COVID. And that was actually kind of cool. Right? So I talked about starting a podcast and focus on health and wellness. So I think that was at least a little attribution to kind of taking a different stab in talking about sales, but digging a little deeper in who the person is, what do they care about, what do they think about, how are they growing physically, mentally, spiritually. That I think is a cool thing that anyone listening to this could definitely add to their QBRs or team meetings moving forward.
So I love that question. I think that's really cool because as technology is such a blessing for us in so many ways, it's created possibilities that are endless that never could have been happening before. Our brain has evolved pretty slowly over the tens of thousands and millions of years as we've become humans, and yet technology's changed over the last 20 or 30 years so rapidly. And yet as humans, we just kind of expect ourselves to operate like computers, to operate like the factory floor, worker. But in reality, we have these weird emotions and thoughts and this voice that goes in the back of your head that tells you you're not good enough, that tells you, I'm not loved, or whatever these challenges are that come up for a lot of us that have that voice that's always chattering. And yet we don't really know how to manage that and how to handle that. And so actually treating somebody on your team as a real human that has unique perspective, that has emotions and fears and goals and aspirations, I think it is so powerful when we go beyond just the like, hey, what'd you do to hit your quota today? You know, what'd you do for your quota this month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some feedback. So Jordan, can you kind of walk us through a typical day for you, just from a routine standpoint of, you know, whether it's yoga or meditation, affirmations, exercise, what is kind of typical for you?
Yeah. So for me, it's wake up, and first thing I attempt to do most days, I am by no means perfect, is before I even get out of the bed, think about something I'm grateful for, or just tell myself today's a great day for a great day. Listen to Dr. Daniel Amen talks a lot about how this is like really good for programming it into your body for setting yourself up versus the traditional, oh, I don't want to get up. Just starts yourself down a negative path. So it's, hey, I'm grateful for waking up today. I'm alive. I'm pretty lucky. I don't know how that happened. I couldn't explain to it, but I'm alive. And then get up and sit on my meditation cushion, usually for, 10 to 20 minutes, depending upon the day. And then I go get some green drink, put some good, like, healthy stuff in my body. And then I move on to a couple tasks, a couple of the deep work pieces that I need to do. Usually by then it's like 6:30 or so. And I'll spend about an hour working through a task list that I've actually prepped the night before to really say, like, okay, what am I going to go get done tomorrow? And so I'll work for about an hour on some deep work, some things that I really want to focus on. And then I'll bring a workout into the day and really kind of get the rest of my day moving with calls, meetings, etc. But those are really kind of how I work to structure my days, of a little bit of time for mindfulness. I end the meditation with some visualization or some affirmations for myself, depending upon what I'm focused on. And then I feel like I'm really primed and ready to go for the rest of the day.
From a exercise perspective, what kind of physical activity do you normally do on a daily or weekly basis?
So being that I live in the mountains, I have pretty good access to different things at my doorstep, especially, well, winter or summer. But COVID, I got a Peloton, did that whole jam. So I actually did a ride with a buddy this morning to get out and like connect with a friend as well. Yeah. We acquired a handful of different weights through COVID. So we'll do different strength trainings here at home with my fiance or by myself. And then I'll get out and mountain bike or hike or ski or split board and hike up a mountain a lot of different days as well. So it really runs the gamut, as well as, you know, throwing in yoga, although I haven't done it as much as I'd like to, or as I know I should. But that's on my list for tomorrow morning. So kind of makes myself entertained.
You're in a great spot for outdoor exercise too, out there in Colorado.
There's also this pressure almost of just, you know, walking around and seeing that, like, you know, I look out my window and I see the kids are riding their bikes to school or cross country skiing. You know, you see adults out getting out every day, moving around, and so there's it's been really, really good for me to get moving in that regard. And then also with my fiance who focuses on functional medicine and integrative medicine and nutrition is a big part of it.
There you go.
Really trying to focus on how do I put good fuel in my body. And so I most days will do some form of intermittent fasting for usually about 14 hours as well. And so I've got myself off the eat a big breakfast train or things like that to also really focus on the other part of my well-being.
That's awesome. Now, have you played around with the extended fasting at all, or you're just doing that kind of intermittent every day?
I have done a couple extended fasts. I did a couple months ago. I did a 3-day, pretty much water only. I did a little bit of salt and a little bit of bone broth or some broth on a couple of days that I was really feeling like I was a little famished. And then I've done a 5-day fast on a similar regimen there and felt fantastic. I was able to go out and like play 18 holes of golf 2 days on days 4 and 5. And once I got through really the once I find you get over that first day, you at least know you can go that long. And days 3, 4, and 5 are when I really feel pretty fantastic. My brain feels more focused. And there's a lot of really cool science that backs this up. Now, depending upon, your hormones and who you are and the activity level you're doing, it's worth some research and not just going straight into a fast. But actually one of my coaching clients just did their first ever 3-day fast, and he was astounded at how
it's crazy
fantastic he felt. Because so much of it's just conditioning in us thinking that, we're supposed to eat 3 meals a day every day of the week. It's like our ancestors didn't do that. That's not even necessarily what our body's built for. And yet all the time I sit there and say, oh, I'm starving. It's like, well, now I know that is not the case at all, even though it's been, 12 hours since I ate last.
Yeah. And when you start to think of it like, I'm not eating, but I am eating because that's what my body fat is for. And it's very counterintuitive because people that haven't done the extended, they don't understand that once you're running on ketones, you feel great and you are eating. You're just not putting food in your mouth. Your body's taking the fat, converting it to ketones and pumping it into your body for energy. And once you get over just that hurdle, especially if you're not fat adapted, then it's smooth sailing. So we do these once a quarter, and we're doing one coming up here in 2 weeks. So a little, in between post Labor Day, and before football season. So we do them once a quarter. We had a pretty good group last time.
Yeah, we were like 5 or 6 people, and I definitely found it's more of a mental state, right? After you get past 48 hours, you like physically, you like don't feel like your stomach's sitting there rumbling and you're hungry. You're mentally like, wow, I really want to eat a big sandwich. I think after doing the last one, we're probably not going to shoot for over 72 hours, but it was fun to have a group of, I think there's 5, 6, 7 of us doing it and texting everyone, checking in, how's everyone doing? But that's definitely one thing that was fun for me in the last year that I'd never done before, which was going to be a question I wanted to ask you, whether it was something you've attempted, you didn't have to like it or not, but I feel like in COVID, we've all been trying net new things. Like a month ago, we tried water float therapy, Matt and myself, which was interesting. We want to try it again. But has there been something that you've done, exercise, mental side, whatever, net new in the last year or two, good experience, bad experience, but just something you'd share as something you've attempted?
Oh, I'm usually trying all sorts of new things.
Yeah.
I've been trying stuff for a while. I've done float tanks, sensor
That was weird.
deprivation tank. Big fan of it. It's totally weird.
Yeah.
And that to me is the fun part of all of this. The weirdness around, I'm not going to eat for 3 days. Are you nuts? Like, that's what's proven to me time and time again is just by putting yourself out there, being curious, trying something new, you'll realize that there is so much more, so much further that we can go, that we can push ourselves as humans that we have not been trained for. And so, I just went on the longest bike ride of my life pretty recently and pushed myself harder there, where it was like, I can't do more than, 20 miles. And you start pushing through it and it's like, oh, turns out I can. And
Congrats.
So, thank you. It's been really fun. I think for me, the piece that I've really been practicing is going back, and this is nothing that's that crazy, but I use an app when I read called Readwise that pulls my highlights off of my Kindle or if I have something in Evernote. And I've just been really working to build habits. And I look at that app every single day, have for the last year or so, and it brings up different highlights that I've had from different books and different things that I've read that I want to go remind myself about. That has been a really powerful thing for me. And then the other piece is really around habit creation or how I manage myself there. How do I make it easy for me to do the things that I want to do and hard to do the things that I don't? And so, I've taken beer out of the fridge some days.
Yeah.
I've
Can't say I've done the same.
It's, and again, all for each of us. But that's really what I've worked to figure out is how do I optimize my environment to make it easier for me to do the things that I want to do. So my cell phone doesn't go to the bedroom. It sits right next to my meditation cushion because I use an app when I start to do my morning meditation. And so really trying to figure out how do I optimize my environment now that especially everyone else is at home is really what I've tried to figure out for myself. So I don't have to cave in to the easy things. And I'll give you one quick example. My buddy left his PlayStation at my house recently. I like playing video games, but have never bought a system because I know I will end up playing them too much. And now the system's sitting up there, and guess what I do when I feel like I've got an extra half hour or something? It's like, oh, I'm going to go sit and play video games.
Yep.
And I've wasted hours now doing that. And so it's like, okay, how do I make this harder for me to do? So stick the system somewhere else. So I've got to go plug it in every time I want to go play it versus it being sitting there just like push the button, you're ready to go.
It's so true. And it's like, why make it harder for yourself? If you're having a problem eating like shit, get the junk food out of the house. If it's not there, you can't eat it. Replace it with healthy stuff. But it goes back to the same thing too. Like, you are the sum of the 10 people you spend the most time around. I mean, we are sponges already. So just, if it's already going to be a challenging thing, don't make it harder for yourself with that kind of stuff, keeping it around.
Yeah.
Controlling the environment. I love it.
Love it.
Well, I guess for kind of some of the folks that you help coach and train, what are some kind of the starting points that you like to at least share? So if someone was to kind of be working with you directly, of things to start thinking about, that might be a quick takeaway for anyone listening to the podcast today,
especially sales guys.
Yeah.
So when I've done new hire trainings or work with clients, the first thing that I talk to people about is a growth mindset and figure out, do they know what that is? I find that more and more people do know about it, but I'm still continuously shocked at how many people don't understand this concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset. Mm-hmm. And especially as, a lot of folks have kids and things of the sort, yep. I think this is so critical. So that's the first thing that I talk to people about is, were you trained and did you come up with this concept of having a fixed mindset that my intelligence, my intellect, my skills and abilities are fixed and set? Or are you somebody that runs into a wall and says, well, how do I build a bridge to get over that thing? How do I dig a tunnel under it? How do I blast a hole through that? And that's where I start with everybody, because if we don't understand the fact that our brain continues to grow and develop through neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, as we age and continues to, where when I went to school, what I was taught is your brain kind of stops growing around your 20s, depending upon male or female. We find that the brain continues to grow as you get older. And if people don't believe that, first and foremost, all these other things that you can do or try probably aren't going to hit home very much if you don't believe that you can actually grow or get better. So that is my first thing that I talk with people about if it's something that they're not familiar with.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's a perfect one for us to maybe end on here. Well, we definitely appreciate the time for any of those who are kind of out there listening and want to get in touch. What would be the best way for any of our listeners to maybe reach out and, reach out to you directly or, try to get you on a call or something?
Yeah, you can get me at Jordan at mycoreos.com. Some people think it's my Coreos or my Oreos. Mycoreos.com. You can hit me up on my podcast, Peak Performance Selling, and then LinkedIn, always a good place, even though I get way too many messages there. So let me know that you heard me on the podcast or something of the sort. So it's not one of the million spam LinkedIn messages, and I'll probably get back to it within a week or two.
Love
awesome.
it.
Thank you, Jordan.
Jordan, we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Have a great.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Optimize Sales with your hosts, Matt and Sean. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and we look forward to bringing you more health and wellness tactics to make you the best sales rep or sales leader possible.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please follow us on Instagram at Optimize Sales, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review on all major podcast distros.
As always, you can head over to OptimizeSalesShow.com to check out all the links and resources in the show notes.
That's all for this episode. And remember, optimize your mind and body, optimize your pipeline.